what this other person does. Please put your hands together for Michelle Bennett.
Hi.
What's up? What's up?
It was funny to watch myself in the back or like backstage watching that, like you guys being so distinctly and effortlessly cool, and me with a freaking blazer being like,
Oh, oh yeah.
So I'm gonna share my screen because I have I'm here for the TED convention.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go ahead and share it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, privileged even to be here at TEDx Gowanus giving this talk. This topic, I think, will be at top of mind for most people, especially given that this is a POC space, and also given the most recent racial reckoning that's happened in our nation. I know it's deeply personal to me. So without further ado, I'd love to present my TED Talk. So you've got a white dad. As I said, this topic is really, really personal to me. This is for people who, specifically POCs, who find themselves not only in proximity to whiteness, but a descendant of it, which is honestly a terrifying position to be in. So I've outlined 3 simple steps to help you navigate this position, unpack your identity, and hopefully find a way to navigate this world. Step 1 is determining your racial identity. This one is actually pretty simple because if you find yourself being a POC while at the same time finding you have a white father, the answer is probably very simple. You're probably half Asian. This is for a number of reasons. The first being more that the most common interracial relationship, and all of this because whiteness is deeply rooted in the patriarchy and heteronormativity, is going to be very gendered and very patriarchal. So I do want to name that up front. The most common interracial hetero partnership is the white male and the Asian female. You can walk down any street in Williamsburg and experience this anecdotally. You'll notice 2 patterns. It is most traditionally a white man and an Asian woman, and the Asian woman is traditionally way out of the man's league. But I will kind of continue to unpack why the former is true and why you are indeed probably half Asian. It actually stems back to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, when there was an influx of Chinese male immigrants for the California Gold Rush. Because they were indebted to white brokers and not able to bring their families over, there was then an influx of Chinese female immigrants that were prostitutes or sex slaves to cater to their needs. This became a stereotype, which we all know white people are clinically addicted to, that became the basis for the legislature that would exclude them from immigrating to the United States in future years. The stereotypes around Chinese immigrants, specifically Chinese women, were impotent counterparts. So they viewed Chinese men as weak and fragile and unworthy. Because the Chinese women were traditionally prostitutes, they were seen as docile, service-oriented, but still having a proclivity for the sexual and the immoral because they were serving as prostitutes. And because this was tainted by Orientalism, fetishization, eroticism, there were myths like horizontal vaginas. This particular myth I won't debunk if it makes you want to have sex with me more. If there is a TED Talk or a talk back after this, I'm more than happy to unpack that a little bit more and field any questions. More contemporary stereotypes that kind of fuel these partnerships are the idea of tiger mothers. So a couple years ago, the book Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother was published, in which author Amy Chua advocated for Jewish men and Asian women to pair up because their cultural views on offspring were aligned. And thus they said that they would produce genetically and culturally superior offspring that would contribute to our capitalist society. And Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother is a book that white people loved. It was the book they picked that year to read by a minority author to kind of just see what we were up to or planning in terms of potentially taking over their power. In sum, white men are weak and thus seek out political structures, economic systems, and pussy that maintain that power. So that's step one. Moving on to step two, determine what kind of white your white dad is. Now, as a minority, I have to concede that there are sadly different types of white people, even white men that are attracted to Asian women. This is a courtesy not typically extended to minorities by white people. I do want to name that up front, but sadly, that is the way of the world. I will say, like gender and like sexuality, white identification among white dads does exist on a spectrum from the traditionally feminine to the traditionally masculine. We begin on the feminine side with the weeb or the weeaboo. This is someone who has probably harassed you online and is so consistently emasculated in their everyday life that they seek out who they presume will be the most submissive partner, Asian women, who may or may not have big old anime titties. On the traditionally masculine side of the spectrum, we have the troop. The back of this man's neck may or may not look like a 6-pack of hot dogs. And if someone commits the microaggression of asking them if they met their wife in Vietnam, whether or not that is temporally possible based on their age, they will say yes, regardless of whether or not this is true. They will say yes. For those of you who don't recognize this image, this is actually Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump attending Forrest Gump's wedding with his Asian wife, Susan. Some other men we'll find on this spectrum also include Northwestern MFAs who still ended up as high school English teachers, who view themselves as way overqualified as they are, but are consistently emasculated by cooler high school students and thus seek the companionship of a more docile partner. The guy doing kicks in your local park, this is self-explanatory. And my dad. My dad is what's known in academia as a tactical white. While not quite a troop, is known to wear Oakleys, has a radar detector, considers installing security cameras on his home and watching the footage a hobby, and has a huge affinity for Taekwondo. Can't get enough. So step 3, now that we know who you are and who your dad is, we can kind of outline some do's and don'ts to help you navigate these spaces in your relationship with your father. I'll start with the do's. Do participate in martial arts when they enroll you. It'll give you a great sense of discipline, is a great form of exercise. And if you are good enough, it'll be cooler to people later in life. People will appreciate that. It's like piano lessons, but useful, right? Tactical. The only exception to this is don't do it if it's karate. To quote a comedian that I can't name right now, karate is the Dane Cook of martial arts. Do not do karate. Second, make it a family affair when it's officially cargo short season. Cargo short season, specifically the first day, is very culturally significant to white dads. It's a huge day for them. So really lean in on that day. Really make them feel seen. And they'll be riding such a high that they may not say anything problematic for maybe the next 2 hours or so, which brings us to our next point. Call them out when they say problematic stuff. It just is what it is. Sadly, you are the result of their imperialist ideas. But hopefully, if we continue to critique theirs and call them out, that's where the buck will stop, right? With us, it's a cross to bear. But listen, when you're a POC, it's the name of the game. And lastly, open yourself up to the possibility that a Sunday spent at the Home Depot is a Sunday well spent. This one took me quite some time to truly internalize, but I guarantee you it is well worth it, and you will catch me in that plant section. Moving on to the don'ts. Do not take it personally when they do stuff like, or when they say stuff like, newsflash, buddy. I have tried and cannot track this historically to find its roots, but I believe it's rooted culturally in spending hours watching a cable news network of their choice. Next, do not let their authoritative tone fool you into thinking that they've ever thought critically about anything. Okay, the world is built for them. All right, they've never had to question the systems at play that have always worked for them. They've never had to think from anyone else's perspective. Okay, but they think they really got their finger on the pulse of society because of this, when in reality, they have their proverbial thumb up their proverbial ass. But because they are delusional enough to think that they do, they will talk to you authoritatively and talk downward. But studies show that only around 40% of white dads can read. So if you ask yourself, has he done the reading? Chances are he probably hasn't. Do not keep your shoes on in the house. It's chaotic. It's disturbing that your father keeps his dirty street shoes on in the house. Listen to your Asian mother and take your shoes off in the house. Okay? And lastly, do not, under any circumstances, tell them what WAP means. This is a can of worms that you will never recover from. You will never escape. You will enter the sunken place. There is no escaping. I cannot stress enough that you should never translate this for them. Okay? In conclusion, it is a burden to be the buffer between the rest of the world and your father's chaotic colonialism. But it's best to approach this with love, compassion, and plenty of SPF 50. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. You're on mute, Steve.
Karate is definitely the cook of martial arts, man.
Absolute disaster.
Oh my God, that was so funny. God bless you for that. I was dying. Don't ever tell them what WAP means.
Please don't. Tell them that it's like the Italians. Well, my dad's Italian, so it's like just tell them people are bringing without papers back or something.
Thank you so much. If you want, before you leave, you can tell them where to find you on that social media, though.
Sure. I'm on Instagram at Robot Noises and on Twitter at Meeshibe, MEESHIBEE. Thanks so much for having me, Steve. This was so fun.
Thank you. Woo! I'm having fun. I'm laughing. I'm listening to the tunes. This is a great night for the telethon. But I got some brand new news for you guys.